What's up, guys? My name's Cody Brockway, back with another episode of CB's Fun with Vinyl at long last. We've been quite busy the last couple of weeks, to tell you the truth. I was lucky enough to go see one of my absolute favorite bands in concert on Wednesday night. They came to my birth city of Hamilton, Ontario, Canada. This was Iron Maiden. This is where I got the shirt from. This is the Senjutsu shirt. Senjutsu, sorry. It says Hamilton somewhere on the back there. Pretty cool. They are just absolutely amazing, and this concert was fantastic. And I'm not going to talk too much about that because I'm going to put that in a separate video. So stay tuned for that. But they're actually going to be in this video. One of their records is going to be in this video because today we are talking about third albums. Now, there's a lot of videos online about, live albums or debut albums or comeback albums, etc., etc. But what about the third album? Go through an artist's career and think about their third album and think about how different it was to what came before, or how different it was compared to what would come after, or how consistent it was in their entire discography. So we're going to be talking about third albums today. There's not a lot of videos about third albums. If there is, you can let me know, but yeah, so actually this one that we're talking about, this is going to start us right off of this video. This is not in alphabetical order like I usually do. This one came out in October of 1970. That was 52 years ago, and of course this band already had 2 records out. They already changed the game with the first 2, and they were prepared to do it again with the third. It's Led Zeppelin 3. My God, what a fantastic album. They totally... so side 1 is kind of the Zeppelin that you knew from the first 2 records, but then side 2 was this whole sort of acoustic thing that they had just started adapting to. So you get stuff like Tangerine and That's the Way, and what else we got? This is a great album. Hats Off to Roy Harper, Gallows Pole. Yeah, I love this album. And it's celebrating a birthday this month, so happy birthday to Zeppelin 3. And of course, so this is kind of like a half electric, half acoustic album, like I said before, and we all know what happened with the next record, Zeppelin 4, where they seemed to sort of just mash it all together, and it was a great outcome, but this was the stepping stone, and a massively amazing, influential stepping stone it is. Now, here is one of my favorite bands. I love their first 3 records mainly, and so this is their third one. It's Rainbow, Long Live Rock and Roll. This is the last one with Ronnie James Dio. This is before they started had that revolving door of singers, and Graham Bonnet and Joe Lynn Turner would come in to fulfill vocal duties, and that wasn't bad stuff, but the writing changed. Ritchie Blackmore was really trying to sort of go for a hit, and there were some good tunes in the later Rainbow albums, like Since You've Been Gone's all right, All Night Long, all that, but doesn't really compare to the Ronnie James Dio stuff. LA Connection, Long Live Rock and Roll, Kill the King, Lady of the Lake, Gates of Babylon. This album is really good, and so the first one was the first Rainbow record, just Ritchie Blackmore's Rainbow. And the next was Rising, and then Long Live Rock and Roll. This is just a totally classic metal triple threat, really. And again, the stuff after it was okay, but it didn't really live up to this, in my opinion. I'm not being disrespectful when I say this. But yeah, great record. Their third record, Rainbow's third record, Long Live Rock and Roll. Next up, we got Rush, Caress of Steel. Now, so they had already done their first record, and they had already done Fly By Night at this point, so this came, and this is not my favorite Rush record. They would continually get better after this, but this is still great. It's got Lakeside Park, Bastille Day, I Think I'm Going Bald, and of course it's got the Necromancer, and yeah, the Fountain of Lamneth. They would totally change the game right after this one. This was kind of like a stepping stone to get to 2112 and Farewell to Kings, all that stuff that would come after it. Neil was already cemented in the band, and the drumming on this is fantastic. The musicianship on this album is just brilliant. But yeah, so Caress of Steel, Rush. Hey, we're back. Sorry about that, guys. Halfway through recording this video earlier on today, I got called in to go to work. So now I'm off work, and it's later at night, but that's okay. We'll continue where we left off with 1986's Master of Puppets by Metallica. Now, many of you know the tragic story of this album. They put it out and they went on tour, and unfortunately the tragic bus accident happened and bassist Cliff Burton was killed. That's a massive, massive loss to the metal community, even to this day. You know, his contribution to the first three records will never, ever be forgotten. I personally like all of their albums, and not really a big fan of Saint Anger, but I like everything else, Black Album, Justice for All, the new ones, etc., etc. But, you know, with such a tragic loss like this, the dynamic has to change. It has to be different. It won't be the same. And as good as they've always been, you know, losing Cliff was obviously a huge, huge blow to the band and all of us as fans. So, R.I.P. Cliff Burton, you will never be forgotten, bro. I love Cliff Burton, and I know, I'm like very certain that most of you love him as well. Now we go back to 75. This iconic band had put out 2 records, but this one really got them like their first sort of sense of like, you know, like radio hits. It had 2 singles on it called Sweet Emotion and Walk This Way. That's right. We're talking about Aerosmith's Toys in the Attic. This is many people's favorite Aerosmith album, and with good reason. I'd say that this is probably tied with Rocks for me, but this album's got Toys in the Attic, Uncle Salty, Adam's Apple, No More, No More, You See Me Crying, and of course, many other great tunes. This is really the album that sort of put Aerosmith... I love their first 2 albums, okay, but don't get me wrong on that, but this is really the one that sort of blasted them into superstardom the first time. Classic. Classic, classic, classic. We're going back to 1970 for this guy's 3rd album. So his first album was I think it was like a soundtrack or something. It was called Friends, and then the next one was called Elton John, and then the next one after that was called Tumbleweed Connection. This is a magnificent album. This is actually pretty much a perfect album. Not really a lot of songs on here that you hear on the radio that often these days, but there's certainly a lot of fan favorites on here, and with good reason. Many people actually cite this as his best album, or Goodbye Yellow Brick Road, or whatever, but this was kind of the beginning period, maybe just after the Elton John album, where he would write like 7 or 8 classic albums, just like in a row, just like amazing records, but this is the 3rd one anyway. Tumbleweed Connection, this has got Country Comfort, Burn Down the Mission, Ballad of a Well-Known Gun, Come Down in Time, Amarina. I love every single thing about this album, and it's totally different from all of his records. This one's got like a very sort of country and western feel, and while that would show up, you know, with other releases like Mad Men Across the Water and all that, this album is really one of his many standout albums. And Tumbleweed Connection by Elton John, it's great. If you haven't heard it, go check it out. Absolutely fantastic. Now we're going back to metal here. 1987. This is a classic thrash band. It's one of the big 4, and they, you know, came out with this brilliant album, Among the Living, in 1987. This is their 3rd record. This is one of my favorite albums of all time. The drumming on this is just absolutely insane. This band is just killing it all the way through here. I love it. And this is a massive fan favorite for all of you who are Anthrax fans. You know this album is some next level shit. I just love it. Okay, going back to the early 70s for this band's album. This actually was a huge influence on the next band that I'm going to show after this. Jethro Tull, Benefit. I mean, this is, you know, the sound of a band who had just sort of started shedding that sort of folky thing that was on the debut album, and they were really coming into their own here, and with, you know, with a great outcome. I mean, this is a great album. Teacher, To Cry You a Song, With You There to Help Me. This is an awesome album. Absolutely great. This is Benefit by Jethro Tull. Now, with that little hint that I dropped at the beginning of the video, you might be able to assume, by my shirt too, of course, that the next one would be Iron Maiden, Number of the Beast. Steve Harris has often cited Jethro Tull as the greatest band of all time, and many of us have cited Iron Maiden as being the best band of all time, or Jethro Tull, or, you know, all that other prog stuff, Genesis, etc., etc. But all that stuff had an impact on these guys, and this is their third record. I mean, how different is this from the two that came before it? So the first two, you had the self-titled Iron Maiden, and you had Killers, and those were with Paul Di'Anno on vocals. He leaves the band. In comes the air raid siren, Bruce Dickinson, and history is set right there with that change, okay? This just immediately, he blasts, you put the needle on the record and it blasts through with Invaders, and his voice just totally soars with this amazing music. The band, the writing on this is just killer. I mean, no, pun intended, yes. But this is just a magnificent album, top to bottom. And they're actually doing the 40th anniversary re-release of this as well. It'll have Total Eclipse on it in place of Gangland, which I like both songs. So it'll be nice to have this one with Gangland and the new one with Total Eclipse and all the live stuff, especially the live stuff that's going to be on that. Pretty cool. Come get it at Second Chance Records. Number of the Beast, 1982, their third record. Amazing. Now this cover, my cover for this is a little beat up, but the record's great. This is Black Sabbath's third album, Master of Reality. One of my favorite Sabbath albums. They had already hit a sweet spot with the first album all the way up to, I don't know, number 5 or 6. Then the last two with Ozzy were Then the next three, which would have Dio on it, Heaven and Hell, Mob Rules, and then like 10 years later they would do Dehumanizer. Those are great albums too, but of the original run, this is one of the absolute best albums, and this is the third one, Master of Reality. I gotta get a different copy of this, but this is the embossed cover, so it's pretty cool. Yeah. Next up, we have my favorite band of all time, which is Genesis, Nursery Crime. It's a similar case as with Iron Maiden, except for not the singer, but this one saw the entrance of Phil Collins and Steve Hackett, replacing some people who were on the first two releases from Genesis Revelation, which was kind of a blah album. Trespass, which was okay. I'm not crazy about Trespass. It had Anthony Phillips on it, and Chris Stewart, I think, was the drummer on that. But this is where it really, really, really starts to come together for this band on the Nursery Crime record. They had finally secured the classic lineup, and they would put out a string of like 5 records that would just change rock and roll as we know it. Sort of invented its own genre along with the Yes albums and stuff, which you might see some of them in here soon. But Nursery Crime, yeah, love it. Love it, love it, love it. Love everything this band does, really, but love it. Love it. And this is the gatefolded dish. All right. 1974. Queen, Sheer Heart Attack. This is their third record, and it has some sort of continuation with the first two records too. Queen 1 and Queen 2 respectively, 2 of the greatest records of all time, including this one, which makes it 3 of the greatest records of all time. To me, this band was also one of them that had this stride of great records right from the beginning up until, you know, I don't know, pretty much until Freddie died. I like all of their albums, but Sheer Heart Attack, Queen, it's a brilliant album, brilliant, brilliant, brilliant. And I'll be right back. Oh, so sorry about that. I am one popular man today. No more interruptions. I am so sorry. We don't usually get any interruptions. Today is just one of those days, I guess. I don't know. I should be happy about it. All right, next up. Okay, look, some of you guys may love this band. Some of you might be like, I'm somewhere in the middle. And some of you might just be internet trolls who like to shit on them, but I stand by my love for this band, and sure, not everything they put out was great, but this is one of my favorite records, and this came out when I was just a kid. This came out in 2001, and this really, elevated this band to massive popularity, but it's a great album, too. It really is. This is Nickelback's Silver Side Up. They came on the scene just killing it. I mean, I love The State. That's the album before this, but this is the one with How You Remind Me. And but there's lots of great heavy tunes on this. Like, that was just, as much as I love that song, that was a big radio hit. And on this you got Never Again, which is not exactly like a happy song. It's more like this set of parents who are in an abusive relationship, and the guy basically beats the mom all the time, and then at the end of the song the mom ends up killing the dad. If you ever listen to the words in it, it's a great song. The riffs in it are just killer. It's totally chunky, heavy. I love it. It's great. Where Do I Hide? Hang Nail, more amazing riffs. Great songwriting. This band writes a lot of great songs. Chad's a great songwriter. And You Can Try to Change My Mind, It'll Never Work. I love Nickelback. And I don't care. This is a great album. This is a classic in its own right. Went like 6 times platinum in the States. And, this is a big time album. It really is. It's really good. Lots of quality tunes on it. All right, 1971, this band's third album. The first two were kind of blah, and this one was kind of, yeah! Alice Cooper, Love It to Death. This is a magnificent record. I cannot even tell you how great this album is. Ballad of Dwight Fry, end of story. Not really, but it could be, because that song is so freaking great. I'm 18, Caught in a Dream, Hallowed Be My Name, a little different from Hallowed Be Thy Name, Black Juju, but I gotta say, probably my favorite song on here is Ballad of Dwight Fry. It's just the way that Alice and this band sort of get into that role of the psychotic character that they're singing about in the song. Unbelievable. Freaking blows my mind. Absolutely. Just love Alice Cooper, and that is the album, especially with the hit single I'm 18. They really found their sound on that record, and they were just going right with it. And it didn't do them wrong, like they sort of changed the game on that one. Like they left a lot to the legacy of Alice Cooper that people would still be sort of influenced by for many more years to come. So, I mean, what else can you say? It's a great record, and it changed a lot of lives for a lot of people. Another great record is 1972 progressive rock classic. This is ELP's Trilogy album, signed by Carl. What an awesome dude he was. This is part of a string of 5 records that totally blew the doors off of prog rock. Not that it ever necessarily had any doors or walls. It was kind of, it was this totally avant-garde, adventurous music, always. But this band put a different spin on it, like all the prog bands did. But there's something about Emerson, Lake and Palmer that is really just true to themselves, and nobody else can really replicate what they do. The first 5 records, everything from the Emerson, Lake and Palmer to Tarkus Trilogy, and there's the live record, and Brain Salad Surgery. Am I missing one in there? No, that's about right. But those 5 albums, just amazing. Trilogy, I love this. The Endless Enigma, Part 1 and 2, From the Beginning, Hoedown, of course the song Trilogy, The Sheriff, Living Sin. This album is amazing. I love this record, and the drumming on this, we'll get to the keyboards in a second. The drumming on this is absolutely phenomenal. Greg Lake delivers a killer performance, and Keith Emerson, oh my God, that guy always just, this whole band knocks it out of the park on these records, especially this one. And unfortunately, the ones after the first 5 wouldn't be as great as the first 5, but this is the third one, right in the middle of their stride of continuing great classic records. I love this album trilogy, just freaking great. Okay, we're gonna heavy it up here again. We're gonna go to 1986. This is another one of the big 4 that really sort of, this one really sort of changed the game, especially for myself as a drummer. I mean, you listen to the way this guy played on this record, and it's just, it's not necessarily like anything you'd heard prior to this. Rain and Blood by Slayer. I mean, I don't know if this is my favorite Slayer album, but this album really marks a change from the sound of their first 2 records. And it also marks a change of sound of where they're going on the next 2. So South of Heaven and Seasons of the Abyss, of course they're thrash metal records, but they really changed their sound up on those, just like this one doesn't sound like the 2 that came before this. This, for many people, is the benchmark thrash record. And, you know, they might not be wrong, you know, like this album has got lots of killer blasting musicianship on it. Angel of Death, Piece by Piece, Criminally Insane, Raining Blood, Altar of Sacrifice, and Jesus Saves. I mean, you know, produced by Rick Rubin. It's a pretty dark record, as you obviously already know, but this changed metal for a lot of people. And, you know, the presence of Dave Lombardo on here should not be understated. That guy just comes right out of the gates, swinging, kicking ass, taking names. The whole band does, but I'm a drummer, so I really vibe with Dave Lombardo's whole thing he's got going on. Just absolutely fantastic drummer. And that's their 3rd record. We're going to go back to 1971 with the Yes album. This album is where they really started to, I mean, I like Time and a Word and the self-titled Yes album, but I mean, like the one that's just called Yes. Those are both great records, but they had really started to sort of hone in on what their sound was with this record. I mean, Steve Howe had just come in and replaced Peter Banks, and so that automatically, like, that's like I said before with Metallica, it's one of those things where when you replace an original band member, the dynamic changes, and you know, so the presence of Steve Howe on this record is really, really great. I mean, we get stuff like The Clap, which is a guitar solo that he had recorded live, but just the whole sound of the band had really sort of, they had started to find their thing, really, with this record. As where the first 2 were sort of searching for it, and they were great records, believe me, I'm not saying anything bad about them, just saying this is, you know, this really, really, really comes together. There's no covers on this album like there was on Time and a Word. As much as I love that album, this one is where Yes started to sort of become Yes, like definitively. With, you know, they even had a big, huge radio single on this called I've Seen All Good People. But then there's the progressive classics too, like Yours Is No Disgrace and Perpetual Change and Starship Trooper. So when people started hearing this album and they were hearing, you know, that those bass licks and the rhythm section with Chris and Bill Bruford and then Steve Howe and John Anderson and of course Tony Kaye, who would actually be replaced after this record, the whole 5-piece band just totally vibing, and this album really continued to take them in a direction that they would go on further with albums like Fragile and Close to the Edge and stuff. And but yeah, this is where Yes really started to just, they started to find their sound with Time and a Word, but this they had really sort of solidified on it, I guess. I could go on, but this is a classic record. What can you say? What do we got next? Oh, okay. Going to the early 80s with this one. They had sort of, yes, it's from 1980, and this band was already one of the biggest bands on the planet, and their first record only came out in 78. the guitar player in this band absolutely changed the world. And this is how they rung in the 80s, was Women and Children First by Van Halen. Classic record, Take Your Whiskey Home and The Cradle Will Rock, Everybody Wants Some. Just a great third record, and you know, there's a whole, like I said, there's a whole stretch of records. I even like all the Hagar stuff. I'm a big fan of Van Halen. And I probably like this more than Van Halen 2. It's been a while actually since I spun the both of them, but it's possible that could be the case. Although Van Halen 2 is great, you know, there's no denying that. But they really they rung in a whole new era actually with their first record, but this one as well, they rung in a whole new decade with Women and Children First. And this is a great record, top to bottom. All right. We're getting close to the end here. We got Foo Fighters, There's Nothing Left to Lose. So this is where Taylor Hawkins had just joined Foo Fighters during the recording of this album. R.I.P. Taylor Hawkins. And of course, so with his presence in the band, this would really start to signal again a change of dynamic. As to where I think Dave Grohl, the first two records, was almost kind of like a one-man band. Despite having a couple of extra people playing on Color and the Shape, but There's Nothing Left to Lose. This is where he had really started to solidify the lineup of the Foo Fighters, and it didn't really change that often. Like this band was not one of those with a revolving door of people. So this came out in '99, and Taylor Hawkins, and he had slowly, by this time he had finally started to find the band for the Foo Fighters, you know. And this is a great record. I mean, Learning to Fly, Stacked Actors, Breakout, Gimme Stitches, Generator, Aurora. Like, this whole album is really good. So yeah, Foo Fighters, There's Nothing Left to Lose. And lastly, that I've picked here, we've got Slipknot, Volume 3, The Subliminal Verses. Now, we know in recent years, over the last decade or so, this band has gone through a lot of changes, like personnel changes. They lost two key members, Joey Jordison and Paul Gray. R.I.P. to those wonderful musicians. But this is their third record. This came out in 2003. Was it 2003 or 4? Sorry, it was 2004. And the first two records were totally extreme heaviness, crazy. I like the first two records. I'm saying Self-Titled and Iowa, classics in their own right. But this one is also a classic in its own right. This is, by the time their third record came around, they'd started to sort of evolve on their sound. They'd started to sort of, there's a lot of melody to be found in here. There's harmony. Of course, they keep it, they keep it even in the Slipknot sort of vein. But with this, you're getting stuff like Duality and Before I Forget, which would become staples on rock radio, of course. And I think this is just a great record. I love Vermilion, Pulse of the Maggots, The Blister Exists. This whole album's great, really. But sonically, the direction that they were kind of going, or sort of evolving in, was very different from what we had heard previously, which was also great. But third record, you know, evolving upon their sound, and you know, not any worse off for it, I tell you that. This is a really great record, sold really well. This is a fan favorite, and you know, it's an awesome record. Slipknot, Volume 3. All right, guys. So if there's any third records that you guys wanted to mention, or I should have put in the video, please comment down below. I would love to hear from you guys. Please like and subscribe. Share this to all your friends. You know you got that one music lover friend that would take super interest in seeing what we got to say here today. Thanks for watching another episode of CB's Fun with Vinyl, and we'll be back. The next video, I don't know when it'll be out, but it'll be the review of the Maiden concert and how freaking awesome it was. It was so great. Oh my gosh. Okay. All right. See you next time around. Roll call.